I think I'll just introduce you briefly, Martin, but I know last time we met online, we did something through our birth journey, which was really fascinating. And today you're going to be talking about the relationship also with cranial fluid and rhythms. And I think you're going to show some of your beautiful images, are you, that you did, you sent me, which are really, really wonderful. And so Martin's going to explain a little bit about the anatomy and the background to this, how he developed this work. And then we'll have a 5-minute break, and then we'll go into a practical exploration of it through the breath and through meditation. Good. All right, Martin, do you want to, well, let's start with how you discovered this, because it was a discovery, wasn't it? And I know you were really ill. Well, very seriously ill, weren't you, at that time? And this kind of arose from that, didn't it? Yeah.
It did. I did 2 cranial trainings in the early 90s, at the same time as you were training, really. And it was halfway through the second one. I went off to India over Christmas to work with my healing teacher. It was halfway through Franklin's course. And I got a tick bite, and I'd never even heard of Lyme disease. And I got neurological Lyme disease from that. 6 months later, I don't know what it is about this particular healing teacher, I went to see him again in Germany, and I got another tick bite and another dose of neurological Lyme disease. And I know there's many different strains, so I really got a good dose of Lyme disease. And I didn't know what it was. And I was okay for quite a bit, because I was a Tai Chi teacher, very healthy, and teaching and doing a lot of Tai Chi as well as healing and Taoist work. But 7 years later, it hit a point, and I just could not get out of the pit. I just went down and down and down. Once Lyme gets in, boy, do you hit the fan. It is the most terrible thing. And I just knew that there was something in me, knew that I could not beat it. And 7 years later, I was spending most of my time in bed and too tired to do. I could do a couple of healing sessions just to get enough money to stay alive, really. I just lay on my bed and I breathed, and I said to the spirits, I don't want to die, but I just want to let this disease take me so I can see what it is. And I breathed, and I just ran, the same way as you'd channel good energy. I just ran the energy of that disease through me and let the disease take me. I just didn't fight it anymore. I used it as a healing channel rather than trying to fight it off. And the tiredness disappeared and became death. It was, people with Lyme disease describe it as dying. It feels like you're dying. And it was like the waves of death. They just came wave after wave of this experience of dying, until I just dropped out the other side. It was as if I had died, and there was this bright, very light, deep meditative place. And there were these beings there, big. They were just big, that's all I know. They were massive beings, and they didn't say anything. They were just really quiet. And then I didn't die. I came back, and my Kundalini rose for about 2 months. And at the end of that, I was just gently breathing. And I'd started working with the maxilla because I wanted to do my own orthodontics. I've been told I needed orthodontics, and I thought I'll do that with the breath instead. And I've been breathing into this area, and I've been doing that for about a week, and it started getting quite painful, so I did it lighter and lighter. And this blinding flash of light, it was, that what people talk about, I got hit by this blinding, it just, And it was physical as well. It drove through my brain, it drove through my face. It felt like the teeth were coming out the sockets. I could feel the roots of the teeth as it drove through the mouth and down into the jaw. And in that instant, holographic breathing started, or what I have called, I've just got to move something because I can't move my foot, what I call holographic breathing started. And my lips got pulled together, the tongue got pulled to the roof of the mouth, and with that all in place, with the lips still closed, the jaw was gently opening on the in-breath, gently closing on the out-breath. And that started not just to be in the mouth, that spread through the whole face. And what I've been trying to do with the sinuses and maxilla, that just started naturally happening. I didn't have to try and do it. With this gentle motion of the mouth, the whole face started to breathe, and it worked through the brain, through the cranium, through the spine, through the whole body. So it's getting this just wave-like motion with the breath. It was just, I was thinking, what just happened? And I think that feels amazing. That just feels, I've never felt anything like that. And I could feel all of this spiritual energy interfacing with the breath and into every cell. And I could feel it healing me. And I could feel it healing my brain. And that, you know, I had neurological Lyme disease, so that's what I wanted, something to heal my brain. And it never stopped. I just carried on doing that breathing. I know that's not the same for other people. They have to practice it, and at some point, if they do it a lot, that it just be, you know, and that does happen to people. It does just become part of their breath. But I could feel it working through the brain. And at night time, there, you know, while I was asleep, I'd have these dreams, and I could feel the spirits talking to me and describing it and working with me. And I'd wake up and their qualities were still there. I was thinking, wow, they were just speaking to me. So there was this whole spiritual side of it. And it was like this, it's like I'd been in this kind of cesspit of disease. I wasn't going to say cesspit, but that's the word that came out. This cesspit of disease that I was in, and I was just floundering in it, and I just could not get out. And this was like someone had just given me this piece of grass, this thing to slowly pull myself out with. And that's what I did. I used the holographic breathing to heal my brain, to get the breath into my brain, clear the toxins. And that is where my inquiry into my vision of what I call the cranial sea, which is different to the cranial fluid. Because from my cranial trainings, I had this image of the cranial fluid around the brain, in the ventricles, in the center of the spine, and around the spine, and that was kind of it. And that wasn't my experience with the holographic breathing. My experience was that the fluid was through the whole brain. It wasn't just the ventricle, it was through the whole brain, it was through the spine, and I could feel it flowing out through the nerves. And I would try and think, well, that's not right, it doesn't do that. And I would try and stop it, and I would just have it, I'm going to keep it in the brain and the spine and just have it there and do it. And then I would take off that image, and it just poured out through the nerves. It's fluid, it's like that. It's just amazing. And if I held that image of what I was taught in cranial sacral therapy or is in the anatomy books, I could feel that it was killing me, that I wouldn't actually get better from this disease if I held that anatomy and physiology as real. I had to take on what I was experiencing wasn't just, oh, it's energy, but this is actually what's happening. I could feel it happening like that, and I could literally feel, because there's a lot of toxins, there's a lot of neurotoxins in Lyme disease, and I think that's a lot of the tiredness is that the brain becomes so toxic and the nervous system becomes toxic. And I could feel these with the breath and the spirit. I could feel these releasing from the brain, and it wasn't a slow procedure. I could feel that just flowing out through the nerves and into the lymph and away. And it felt like, and that has to be correct for the brain. It's a higher modality. It needs a quick and efficient detox. And that's what's happening. I think it goes out through the nerves. I can feel that going out through my nerves, and I can feel the toxins releasing from here, and it came out, and I can feel it literally leaving out through the nerves and clearing into the lymph and detoxing out through the body. And I was literally feeling better, this whole process. So that just became my image, that the cranial sea was the whole brain, the whole cranial fluid, and that fluid somehow also continued out through the nerves. About 7 or 8 years later, I started teaching that image, and I started teaching people to do it. And I thought, well, if I'm going to teach it, I better look into the anatomy. And I thought, I can't be right. I mean, all these scientists and anatomy people, they must be right. And the more I looked into it, the more it was like a conspiracy theory, that image of the cranial sea or the cranial fluid had been put there to stifle people's spiritual evolution, that people can't properly evolve if they have this minute image of the cranial sea, of the cranial fluid. Whereas if you have what I think is the correct image, that it's all cranial sea and it flows out through the nerves, just having that image is real. And you get this wonderful connection to the higher self. Because I can think, why? Because the way it's described at the minute is so dumb. It's impossible. How, it can't happen as described. It's ridiculous. Cranial fluid can't, like the dural tube, it can't flow down one side of that and back up the other side. That is a ridiculous theory. And why would it? If it comes into the lower part of the brain, why would it go down the spine, back up the spine, and then leave through the top of the head? I mean, it's just stupid. The sagittal sinus is the right size to take the venous blood from the brain. It's the right size for that. That's what it does. And I don't want to go into trying to prove the other one wrong, because I just get mad. I'm just going to give you the new view, and I want to teach you some basic principles of how so people, you're going to have to, one, be willing to put on a new hat, to try something new. Two, you're going to have to be willing to think and work this out for yourself. And to think, believe that maybe how it's been described before may be not correct. So you have to go down this hole, you have to take that on. And there is one thing in this, it is a theory. How the cranial fluid works and is described is not fact. It's a theory. You can't measure the flow of cranial fluid. No one's managed to do that. You can see a pulse in it, but no one has managed to see how it flows. So what is in place at the minute is a theory. So anyway, I'm not going to talk about how it was. I'm just going to open you up to my vision, and you can take that on if you wish. But I've noticed that people, I find it easy, but people find it a little bit hard. So I'm just going to do it bit by bit. And one is I'm going to describe what the cranial fluid is compared to the lymph to start off with. So my demonstration model. In the body, this is the arterial blood. It comes out of the heart. It is 10 times the pressure of the venous blood coming back to the heart. So this is 10 times the pressure of that. So this is coming back very slowly. This is going out very quickly. And they are the same volume. The venous blood and the arterial blood are the same volume. So the venous blood can't take all the fluid back to the heart. So the rest goes back as lymph. There is 2 times as much lymph as there is the combination of venous blood and arterial blood. So this is the size, this is the volume of the lymph going back to the heart. This is the volume of the venous blood going back to the heart, and this is the volume of the arterial blood coming out from the heart. This comes out very quickly. This comes back much more slower. It's 1/10 of the pressure. The lymph comes back very slowly. And the same is true of the brain. The arterial blood coming straight from the heart, straight up to the brain, is 10 times the pressure of the venous blood coming back from the brain. The venous blood in venous sinuses sometimes goes backwards because it's going so slowly. Well, that's what Franklin said anyway. So this is coming out fast. That is going back slowly. This is the cranial lymph. That is what I call the cranial sea. And that has got to go back to the heart in some way other than the venous blood. So this volume of fluid has got to make it's not small. That volume of fluid has got to make its way back to the heart in one form or another. Now, my view of what happens is that cranial sea, because I think I'm going to describe it bit by bit, that cranial sea expands out through the dura and out through the nerves and makes its way back to the lymph. There you will find no description. I found, because when I was researching it, there wasn't a lot of internet, and I was looking it up in anatomy books, and I found one quote about this body of fluid was that they've never found how the excess fluid gets back to the heart. But it's not a small thing. It's not a small thing that's being denied. It's massive. It's like saying as if you'd never heard of lymph. If no one had discovered lymph, they're saying, we don't know how this body of fluid gets back to the heart because they hadn't found any lymph stuff. I mean, it's not a small thing. It's right there in your face. You won't find it in any anatomy books. You might find it, I just found it in some scientific thing where they just said, we've never been able to explain how that fluid gets back to the heart. Okay, so I want to explain some things about that fluid in the ventricles and in the brain. Now, people may have this image of the brain being this solid thing, because in pictures it looks solid. It's 90% water. And once you get down small enough, there's much more space. And I don't know if that's in focus or not. They're like sea anemones rather than cells. They're connected together by tentacles rather than the outsides of the cells. So this is a ventricle. Is there two? No, there's only one. And this is in the brain. It's mirror image, so I'm having a little bit of trouble with it. But when I was doing my cranial training, I was told, doing both of them, that cranial fluid is the most refined fluid in the body. And that's all I actually knew. I didn't actually know what it was. And when I looked it up, which was in one of the anatomy books from Franklin, said cranial fluid. Now, it may be different, but this is just, it was that big, whatever it was, anatomy book they had in that. Cranial fluid is 99% water, and then the 1% was salt, glucose and oxygen. Then the interstitial fluid of the brain, which is this bit, the interstitial fluid is between the cells, 99% water, 1% glucose, oxygen and salt. They're the same thing, you know what I mean? And it's not just this thing that floats around, it's food. They're both food, and they're both the same thing, and they're both primarily made in the same way. How much time I get to show you these different things in this, I don't know. We may have to do more of these, or I also run them. But if John if you want John to run more, you know, because this is like a 10 webinar series to go into the anatomy and the different meditations and the different energies of the different cells. It's a lot there, but I'm trying to give you the basics. So they're made of the same stuff. They're produced in the same way. They are food, and it is. Now, I had to produce a new name, because if I called it cranial fluid, that brought me into an image, into the old image. And then I'd say cranial fluid and interstitial fluid. So I had to find a new name. I call it the Cranial Sea, because it is a sea. It's salt water. It's got sea anemones in it, and it's got little fish in it. It's a sea. So I call it the Cranial Sea. Water is the heaviest fluid in the body. So rather than calling it the most refined fluid in the body, what is more helpful to call it is the fluid with the highest percentage of water. It's more water than bits in it. So you can think of the cranial sea as salt water, oxygen and food. And that food is for your cranial cells, for the glial cells. That, the cranial sea, and it's food and it's lymph. It's carrying the oxygen, it's carrying all the nutriments for all of your cells, and then it's the elimination. And the elimination has got to be good. You think of it, oh, I've got this brain, this high functioning thing, we've got no idea how it eliminates. I mean, what a ridiculous thing. It's like saying, we've never heard of lymph. It's comparable to saying you've never heard of lymph and you don't know how it's working. It's this massive void. I see these things saying, oh, there's this really quick way, and it goes out and you get this tiny little thing going into the venous blood, of how it goes quickly, and then to this time. It's huge. It's not a little bit of fluid that's got to find its way out. It's a huge amount of fluid that has to work its way out. And there's no even if it did go into the venous blood, only that percentage can go away. You're still left with this whole volume that has got to go out another way than the venous blood. And that's it. It's just got another, and the only other way out is the dura, or through the nerves. Now, I'm going to add a different concept. Now, another concept with water. Now, Cranial Sea is 99% water. One of the aspects of water in the body is if you have water on one side of a membrane, any membrane, whether it's a cell or a membrane or whatever, if you have water on one side of a membrane anywhere in the body and the pressure is greater in that water than the other side, the water will travel through the membrane via osmosis. So of course it can go through the dura because it's 90% water, or at least 99% water. At least 99% of the cranial sea can just flow through the dura by osmosis. So you've got the arterial blood arriving, you've got this leaving, there's nowhere scientifically for this to leave, so this pressure is going to grow. And as soon as you get that pressure, it will just osmose through any physical structure around it. So of course, it can flow out through the dura. And of course, it can flow out through the nerves. Am I doing okay, John? Am I making sense? So I just want to get another thing. Yeah, water is the heaviest, so it's going to be downwards. It's like these old-fashioned toilets where you've got the cistern at the top and then a downpipe. It's like it's all by gravity. It's not going back up to the top of your head with this ridiculous theory. It's moving down. And all the nerves are pointing down, and then it's naturally flowing out through the nerves. Now, another name I've had to change together, because we work with the nerves as well, how it flows out through the nerve, because they're a different anatomy. But if you think of it rather than the dura and then the nerves, and what I call it the one brain, not the one brain, but the one membrane. It's one membrane, rather than calling you've got the dura and then the membrane around the nerves, which are given different names, or it's one brain, one membrane, so that the dura comes to the nerves, and it doesn't change, it just gets thinner. It just gets thinner. Let me find a picture. Oops. Okay. It's a mirror image. So the dura here is much thicker, and then as it goes along the nerve, it becomes much thinner. So it's much easier for it to travel out through here. But also in the nerves, there is no lymph. There's no lymph in the nerves. So in the central nervous system, there's no lymph. In the nerves, there's no lymph. So it's just free flow. And if you think of it as one membrane around the whole system, because it's made of the same thing, just getting thinner as it spreads out through the nerves. And then you've got this image of how does this go back? The only way is out. Because if it is going to go out through the dura, and it's going to go out, or through the one brain in the central nervous system, it's going to go out through the one brain in the nerves. That's the only place it can leave for that whole area, is through that external membrane around the brain, around the spine, and around the nerves. There's nowhere else for it to go. You've got blood coming in, you've got blood coming out, and then the only place is out. And if any pressure builds up, which it will do a little bit, it just osmoses out through the side. So it can flow down into the nerves, and it can flow out through the sides of the nerve. So I would like to take this a bit further. What's the time? We've still got time. I'll give you a bit more. I don't want to give you too much information, but let's just, because cranial fluid is created by osmosis, or cranial sea is created by osmosis, and it's created the same in the choroid plexus as in the brain. So in the brain, it's coming from the capillaries. I think there's, I don't know, 600 miles of capillaries or 400 miles. There's a lot. There's much more cranial sea coming from the capillaries than the choroid plexus, but it's made basically in the same way. In the capillaries, this is just one cell. It's got so fine, there's just one cell around it. And where the cell is joining at the bottom, that is called a tight junction. And a tight junction is so small that only pure 100% water can come out. So the joints between the endothelial cells, I think it's endothelial cells, around the blood and make the capillaries, through the joints, only 100% water can flow out, and then the rest just comes out through osmosis, through the actual endothelial cells. And then the endothelial cells are intelligent, and they allow oxygen, glucose, and salt to travel through them in the right amounts and make the cranial sea within the brain. Now the same thing happens in the choroid plexus, except it's not around the cells. You've got the arterial capillaries and then venous blood capillaries. It's a bit like in the whatever where the embryo is getting its where the blood is connecting to the baby from the mother. You've got the venous blood and the arterial blood, and then it comes out, and then you've got a membrane. The choroid plexus is like that. The blood comes out into this space. It's got this membrane around it. I've forgotten what they're called. One is endothelial and something, I've forgotten the name, but it's exactly the same thing. Can't remember. Anyway, between each cell, the same as the endothelial cells, they have tight connections, so only pure water can come through the membrane. And then the cells are intelligent, and they let salt, glucose, and oxygen through. So in exactly the same process, well, not exactly, because it's not around the actual capillary, but it's going through a tight junction and then osmosis through the cell, and then the cell is saying, well, we're going to let this through and not that. So it's produced in the same way from the capillaries as it is produced in choroid plexus. They're produced in exactly the same way. They're the same fluid. And for me, the choroid, doesn't go from the choroid plexus out around for me. What it is the choroid plexus is wrapped around the thalamus. I think all of that oxygen, all of that glucose is actually traveling into the center of the brain and is being used in the thalamus. But that's a later webinar where I teach how that all works. In the flow of it, if you don't have that other image and you just have it flowing naturally, that the ventricle, because they don't describe, there's this whole thing, well, the choroid plexus produce the cranial fluid, which is this. That whole ideologically can't work if you also add to it, well, what about the venous blood? Are they just wasted for it to be producing all of that oxygen? It's also, the ventricles have got to receive the same amount of toxins and carbon dioxide to go back via the venous blood from the choroid plexus. But no one speaks about that because the whole theory of it breaks down. If you think of all of this fluid coming into the ventricles from the brain with toxins, with carbon dioxide, and then being taken out by the choroid plexus, that fits in my theory that the brain is using it, and then the choroid plexus is detoxifying that fluid and producing more oxygen. And for me, that travels inwardly and feeds the third eye and that whole central part of the brain. So I've got a different image of it. But when I was feeling it, I could clearly feel the cranial sea flowing out and keeping its quality, keeping 99% water, its same quality in the central nervous system, but in the nerves. And I was thinking, well, how can that work? Because the nerves are not the same anatomy. You know, they're not within the blood-brain barrier. I don't like that name either. I call that the cranial sea filter now. But anyway, it is, and the connective tissue in the nerves, that is fine connective tissue and a milky fluid which mustn't come back into the central nervous system. For me, the flow of cranial fluid or cranial sea into the nerves is stopping any of the toxins or any of this milky fluid flowing back into the central nervous system. So I'm going to show you how the cranial sea keeps its pristine nature as it flows down through the nerves. And for me, in the same way as it's created, or similar way as it's created in the choroid plexus, in the capillaries, it's created in the same way in the myelinating glial cells which make up the myelin sheath. And they talk about, again, a terrible imagery. They just mention the solid bit of the myelinate. It's a rubbery sheet that protects the nerves, which is rubbish. I've looked at the cross sections. It's layers of membrane and water. This is a cross section of a myelinating glial cell, and you've got the membrane. It's a cell, the nucleus is here, and it's attached to the I remember, whatever the central wire going through it is in axon. No, axon, is that it? Yeah, axon through the middle. And this here on the outside, this is a tight junction. Only pure water can cut. And the only reason for a tight junction is to do that. It's a filter. So the myelinating glial cells are also filters. They just let pure water come in, and I think in the same way as the cells in the choroid plexus, the capillaries are filtering cranial sea, I think the myelinating glial cells are doing the same, and they're creating the environment of the central nervous system around the axons as they travel out through the nerves, and that it can filter whatever's around it and create pure water, oxygen, salt and glucose. So within the myelinating glial cells, for me, it creates the same cranial sea as it's bathing in the central nervous system. So now, when it's in the central nervous system, so this might not be quite correct, there's spaces between they may already be connected, but within the central nervous system, the myelinating glial cells join together. In the central nervous system, there's this space in between them where they've got cranial sea there, cranial sea there, cranial sea there. But as soon as it gets into the nerves, they all join together because the environment around them is different and it can't come in contact with the lower grade of fluid. So there you have them flowing off. There's no membrane, there's nothing here at all. There is no structure, there's nothing to stop this fluid going down there. There's nothing. You try and find a structure, there isn't one. You've got one type of fluid here, but you've got a different milky fluid here, and that milky fluid mustn't come back, and the toxins and the different diseases, they mustn't come back in here. And the only way, because there's not a membrane here, the only way to stop that is that you've got this stream of clear cranial sea flowing down the nerves, stopping what's in the nerve because it's outside of the blood-brain barrier, flowing back. It's the only way. It's the only way. My theory is correct. I don't care what anyone says. The only way to stop the toxins of the nerves coming into the central nervous system is I saw a wonderful thing of this. It had been really raining. There's a torrent of a river coming down, or it was only about 10 feet across. And there was a tributary coming into it, which was clear water. And where the clear water was coming in, there was an area where it was still clear because it just had this clear water. And this is the same. The flow of water stops what's in here coming back. So in the nerves, they're bunched together like this. So you've got, and these myelinating glial cells, they're not the right length. So you've got axons there and then myelinating glial cells around them. They're 100 times as long as they're wide. So this picture would have to be about 40 times as long just to get one myelinating glial cells. But they are perfect not only for creating their own cranial sea from the environment around them. What I experience is a capillary action in the same way as an oak tree. An oak tree can pull 250 gallons of water a day out and up to the leaves through capillary actions. And I think the myelinating glial cells, that's how I experience, are working in the same way. And where they join, there's hundreds or thousands of little tentacles that join them again, which really make this massive surface area so the fluid can flow from one myelinating glial cell into the other. And because it's a coil that can go round 100 times, it's like lots of tubes, and it makes the perfect environment for capillary action to draw the cranial sea and to create the same environment around the axon as the axon has in the central nervous system. So that is why I think I could experience the cranial sea in the brain, in the central nerves, and flowing out through the nerves, because all of the myelinating glial cells were creating cranial sea, water, oxygen, glucose, salt, and they need salt to fire. And in the central nervous system, there's a gap between each one, so that it gets salt there and then fires in the next gap. There's no gaps. How do they explain that there's no gaps for the electricity to fire down the nerves? In the nerves, there's no gaps. But in the middle of each myelinating glial cell is a reservoir which has to contain salt, because I think that is where it fires. Salt water is a perfect conductor of electricity. And the way that myelinating glial cells are described as, oh, they're this rubbery sheet that protects the axon, I just think it's wrong. It's a coil of membrane and it's a coil of salt water, and I think the electrical charge doesn't escape out because it escapes through the water. So it fires, and if it wants to escape, it has to go round and round and round and round 100 times. So it doesn't actually get out because it's spinning. The electricity spins in around each axon rather than escaping out into the fluid around it. The charge travels 50 times as quickly through myelinated nerves than non-myelinated nerves, and I think it is the electricity. I made pictures of it. I haven't got them in this, but I made pictures of it. So for me, it can go down the nerves in two ways. You've got cranial sea, which is full of salt, oxygen and glucose, which is food. And that can go in, it can feed the myelinating glial cells, it can feed the axons, and that's food to that. And there's cranial sea that's full of carbon dioxide, full of toxins, full of all sorts of stuff, full of neurotoxins from Lyme disease. And then that can flow into the nerves, but rather than going into, well, it can't get access to the myelinating glial cells because they've got tight connections. They'll only let in pure water, and then the cell is intelligent. It just lets in what it needs. And the toxins, or the carbon dioxide, or the toxins from the central nervous system will flow into the soft tissue of the nerves, which is this milky fluid and fine membranes, and it'll flow into that, and then it will just come out because it's got to go somewhere. It's going to expand out through the one brain. It's going to come out through the sides, which are just getting thinner and thinner as the nerve gets thinner and thinner. It makes its way into either the venous blood going back to the heart or the lymph going back to the heart. This is true. I'm not making it up. This is how it works. Scientifically, they don't know how that escapes from the brain. It's fucking obvious. I said a nasty word there. It is bad word obvious that there's only one place for that fluid to go, and that is out through the one brain, either around the central nervous system or around the nerves. There is nowhere else. The only tubes going are venous blood and arterial blood, and for this, the only place that can go is out through, and it's 99% water. It goes through anything. In the body, it will flow, and you've got the weight, because cranial sea's got a weight. It's the heaviest fluid in the body, so it's making its way down. It's making its way down the nerves. It's making its way out of the nerves. It joins with the venous blood and the lymph going back to the heart. I will teach you holographic breathing, and sorry to rush, I've kind of got quite speedy. I'll teach you holographic breathing, and we will do an experiment of what it feels like. The old image where you've got 150 millimeters, that's what it, tiny, that much amount of cranial sea in the ventricles and around the brain, or whether you have this huge amount and it flows out through the nerves in something that actually makes sense.
Great.
I'm on my soapbox now. Sorry, I keep talking over you. Go on, you say what you wanted to say.
We'll do a 5-minute break and then we'll come back. And how do you want people to be lying down and seated, or?
To learn holographic breathing, it's very, people go to sleep really easy. So if you've never done holographic breathing, it's best to be seated. Once it's activated, then it's fine to lie down. But it's not an exercise. There's an activation where it will just start. And then once it's going, if you want to lie down, you can. If you want to stay seated, you can.
All right. So you're going to lead us into exploration.
Yeah, all right, I'll do that. So I will describe and demonstrate holographic breathing, then I'll take you on a guided meditation so that everyone can activate holographic breathing for themselves. And then we'll start working with the cranial sea and get an experience of that. That's about it, really. So holographic breathing, the lips are relaxed and closed. The upper surface of the tongue is on the roof of the mouth, and it's as much as feels comfortable. So it may be half an inch, it may be an inch, it may be the whole tongue. And then along with that, there's a gentle motion of the jaw. The jaw is relaxing open on the in-breath, relaxing closed on the out-breath. And it's hard just to do that jaw motion because it starts off as a doing. So it's good to just do the tongue and the lips to start off with, and then I'll talk you into a way of doing the jaw in the guided meditation. So the breath is through the nose, and that is there. I will demonstrate it so that you can see, the movement of the jaw is small. It's just a few, 3 or 4 millimeters, a quarter of an inch. I will demonstrate holographic breathing so you can see it is a very meditative type of breath work. But also you'll see that the movement of the jaw is very subtle. You probably won't even see it because it's so slow, because it integrates into the breath. So it's just slowly opening with the in-breath and slowly closing with the out-breath. So I'll demonstrate it, and then we will go into the guided meditation to learn it. So I'll just do a few breaths. And it takes you, or it takes me, into a deeply transcendental place instantly. It just takes me into a whole different place very, very quickly. I'm going to take my earphones out, so if you need to say anything, John, you have to wave at me. And if it's the first time you've done it, it's good to be seated until it's activated, because there's a good chance you'll go to sleep if you don't do that. And a miss is as good as mile. If you don't get all the things in place, you're not going to be doing holographic breathing. So it's good to be awake while we put it all together. And once it's activated, it's like riding a bike. You can do it walking, lying down, however you want to do it. But it's learning it. It's good to be seated so that you can be aware of what we're going through. All right, everyone, just breathing naturally in your own way. If you know holographic breathing, doing that. For the new people, just breathing naturally in your own way. We're going to bring in some resources, so everyone can bring in some resources. So to start off with, sending a smile, sending some energy to the earth, and allowing the earth to say hello back. And notice what that feels like through your body and through your energies. And sending a smile, sending some energy to the higher self and the beneficial energies, any divine energies you want to work with, divine teachers, higher energies, anything you're used to or wanting to work with. And letting the higher self and beneficial energies say hello back. And notice what that feels like through your body and through your energies. And asking the higher self, the earth, the higher self, and the beneficial energies to be with you through the whole webinar as your guide, as your healing teacher, as your resource. So you are resourced within yourself. Just breathing gently and bringing your lips together in a relaxed way, not tense, just relaxed way, and having the upper surface of the tongue on the roof of the mouth. So it may be just the front of the tongue, maybe an inch of the tongue, maybe the whole tongue, but it must feel comfortable. So the lips are relaxed and closed, and the tongue, upper surface of the tongue, is relaxed and on the roof of the mouth, and the breath is through the nose. And to get the experience that you can move the jaw with the lips closed, just start bouncing the jaw up and down, maybe a bit like chewing, so you can feel in an up and down motion rather than side to side, just so you get the experience that you can move the jaw and keep the lips closed. We do this every day when we're eating. We move the jaw much bigger and faster and keep the lips closed. So just gently bouncing the jaw a bit, noticing that you can keep your lips closed and move your jaw and keep your tongue on the roof of the mouth. And now slowing down that motion of the jaw so it's moving more relaxed, more slowly, and just a small up, down motion. So we're going to start this from the jaw, and when you feel ready, as the jaw is opening, allowing the breath to come in through the nose. As the jaw is closing, the breath is leaving through the nose. Notice it feels like a little bellows. The jaw is relaxing open, draws the breath in through the nose. As the jaw is relaxing closed, it exhales the breath through the nose. It starts working like a little pump. Relax the back of your neck. Relax the back of your head. The jaw opens, it draws the breath in. The jaw closes, it exhales the breath. So it's only opening a small amount, just a few millimeters, but it is opening. It is a movement. It's not a visualization. The teeth are separating as you breathe in, and then on the out breath, the jaw is gently closing. The teeth are coming back together, but there's no force. They just gently float together, and there's no pressure. Or you can have it so they don't quite touch, so the jaw is always completely free, whatever feels easiest. The jaw gently opens, draws the breath in through the nose. The jaw gently closes, exhales the breath through the nose. And it's a drawing. The muscles are drawing the jaw down, and then it's relaxing back together. Or it's the diaphragm is actually drawing the jaw down. As the diaphragm drops, it's drawing the jaw down, As the diaphragm rises, the jaw is relaxing back together. Now we're going to change the gestalt. We'll be more energetic now. We're going to bring the emphasis to the nose and the breath. Breathing in through the nose, the jaw relaxes open. Breathing out through your nose, the jaw relaxes closed. So now it's like the breath is moving the jaw. Breathing in through the nose, the jaw relaxes open. Breathing out through the nose, the jaw relaxes closed. Notice everything becomes much softer, much more meditative. You start feeling the energies through the body. The jaw is physical, it's the bones and the muscles. It will bring you to the bones and the muscles. The nose and the breath will bring you into the fluids and energies. Breathing in through the nose, the jaw relaxes open. Breathing out through the nose, the jaw relaxes closed. That should be integrating with people now. It should just be feeling natural. And we're going to integrate it through the body. As the chest is opening, the jaw just follows along. The jaw opens with the chest. As the chest is closing, the jaw gently closes. So we started from the jaw, but then as the breathing starts, the whole body is breathing and the jaw is just following along with it. As the abdomen opens, the jaw follows. As the abdomen closes, the jaw follows, the jaw closes. You feel your whole torso opening on the in-breath, the jaw follows along with it. The whole torso closing, the jaw closes with it. You can feel it right down into your pelvic floor, into your pelvis, the pelvis opening, and the jaw opens with it. The pelvis closing, the jaw closes with it. So it starts and then it's just a functional breath through the whole body that the jaw is just part of. And you can feel it into every cell opening, the jaw is relaxing open. Every cell closing, the jaw is closing. Notice in a very subtle way, your face has started to breathe. It's no longer just the jaw, the sinuses, the maxillary sinuses, all of the sinuses, the nasal passageways, the eyes, back through the whole face, opening on the in-breath, closing on the out-breath. You can feel it through the cranium. You have to sit back in yourself, the cranium opening on the in-breath, the cranium closing on the out-breath. You feel the connection through the spine. You can feel this innate breath, this primary breath through your whole body, through every cell, connecting to the source. It's not just the breath, it's like it's interacting with spirit and it's interacting with the source, and you can feel this breath and energy and nourishment in every cell. It's a activation. It's a new, well, not new, it's new to the human race. I think it's an original breathwork system. Every cell opening on the in-breath, every cell closing. And I want you to start feeling the sideways motion in the face, in the jaw, opening out to the sides as you breathe in, closing medially as you breathe out. In the cranium, opening out to the sides as you breathe in, closing medially as you breathe out. in the chest and the arms, opening out sideways as you breathe in, closing medially as you breathe out. In the abdomen, opening out sideways, so you start feeling this sideways motion of it. Into the arms and legs, opening out to the sides as you breathe in, closing as you breathe out, and becoming aware of also the sinuses, the maxillary sinuses, the eyes. The jaw and mouth will give you access to the cranium. The maxillary sinuses will give you access to the cranial sea. The eyes will give you access to the central nervous system. And feeling the maxillary sinuses and sinuses opening and closing. Notice this, how this connects into your brain and the cranial sea, the fluids of the brain. And we're just as an experiment, we're going to just notice what that feels like if we just have the anatomy book representation of the cranial fluid and feeling the cranial fluid around the brain, around the spine, being ventilated, opening on the in-breath, closing on the out-breath, the ventricles opening on the in-breath, closing on the out-breath, and it just stays. It doesn't go out through the nerves, it's just that. Notice what that feels like through the brain, through your spine. And then let the fluid be between every cell through your whole brain. It's massively more fluid. Just notice the relaxation. So the whole brain through every cell. And the cranial sea has to get to the cells because the cells are receiving the oxygen, they're receiving the glucose, they're receiving the nutrients. So you've got this cranial sea in and around the brain, but between every cells, and every cell in the brain, in the spine is breathing and feeding in this cranial sea. And they're eliminating out carbon dioxide and they're eliminating out toxins. And notice that in the brain, in the spine. And some of this will get taken away in the venous blood, but you end up with this massive amount of cranial sea lymph. Just notice keeping that in the brain and spine, and now let that flow out through the nerves. Letting all of that cranial sea start flowing down your nerves. Notice what that feels like. And some of it is the carbon dioxide that will flow into the connective tissue and fluids of the nerves, and the oxygen, the glucose and pure water will flow through the myelinating glial cells out through the nerves in this continuum through the nerves. So you've got the fluid flowing out into the nerves, but also you've got the purity of the cranial sea flowing through the myelinating glial cells. So you get this pure water, crystalline fluid energy also flowing out through the nerves, through your whole body, through the facial nerves, through the cranial nerves. And so it takes this pure water and oxygen and nutrition out through it, and it becomes a primary way of feeding the whole nervous system. So you feel this water. And the brain is 90% water, and you can feel it's a vortex, it's a receptacle of water. The cranium is a receptacle of water, and that water becomes blessed by the higher self, the divine realms. It's a portal. The brain is a portal of water, and the water is blessed in the same way, in all the different ways you can bless water and use it for healing. Your brain is being used as that water. Cranial sea is water, it's 99% water. That water is being blessed by spirit. And that's traveling through the cranial sea It's traveling out through the nerves and it's blessing the whole body. And you can feel it changing shade and energy as it travels through the different areas of the body. You can feel the vagus nerve taking it down through all of the organs. You can feel the qualities of the cranial sea and the nerves into the organs, all different colours as it moves, as it transforms through the energies of the organs. You can feel it down into the genitalia, you can feel it through the bones, you can feel it through the fascia, you can feel it through the whole body, the spiritual energy anointing the water, 90% water, and the cranial sea is 99% water. Anointing the water of the brain, healing through your whole body, through the nervous system, healing through the whole nervous system, right to the tips of the fingers, to the tips of the toes, to the genitalia, to the organs. It's this water. Cranial sea is water, and you're blessed. And you let that energy come in and transform through you. And then also from the earth after a while, and from the sexual energies, as this divine energy comes down and starts healing you, when it gets to the pelvic floor and the genitalia, that initiates the genitalia, the healing energies. And they start rising up through the spine, through the vagus nerve, through the organs. They start rising up through the body. And that starts feeding the brain from the genitalia, from the sexual energies. This potency starts rising. As that goes through the brain, your mind goes. You move into a state of samadhi. As that no mind, as that releases through the brain, through the third eye in the brain, through all the fluids of the brain, through the cranial sea, through the different myelinating glial cells and glial cells through the brain. And then after a while, the top of the head releases. And that releases up into the heavens. The heavens come down and feed us. And our potency rises and heals through us and connects back up to the higher self. And you're not separate from the higher self. You become one. You are the higher self. The higher self is you. You are a body. You are the higher self. And in the background, what's enabling this, what's feeding this, is holographic breathing. It's letting those energies flow. Breathing. Letting those energies flow. Releasing through the arms and legs. And breathe. Relax. And let go. Deep, relaxed breaths, healing through the whole of you. Letting the cranial sea breathe and heal and spread out to every part of you. And that cranial sea escapes from the nerves into the lymph. Feel it spreading out from the nerves into the lymph, and it becomes this much gentler lymph. It's only 70% water. It's more female. It has the quality of the moon. And that starts flowing slowly back to the heart. Notice you're in a different quality now. You're in the lymph, slowly working back to to the heart. And then it gets to the heart and that pumps out around the whole body. And some of that gets strongly pumped up back to the brain, and it goes into the hundreds of miles of capillaries. It goes into the choroid plexus, and in the same filter, the cranial sea is filtered. Oxygen, glucose, all of the nutrition we need. Feeds the cells, gives an environment for the cells to eliminate into. They let go of their toxins. And it travels down. Water is heavy. It just travels down, out through the nervous system, feeding when all of the toxins, all of the carbon dioxide can release out back into the body. This cycle, continual pure water and nutrition being created, feeding and detoxing your whole nervous system. Be aware of your legs. Definitely let the energies travel down your legs, down the nerves in your legs. I feel people a bit short in their legs, letting the cranial sea travel down through your legs, through the nerves. And it starts releasing out of the nerves back into the lymph and traveling back to the heart. So you get this wheel of creation continually turning and feeding the brain and nervous system. And we're going to come back in about a minute to gently being with that and allowing that to ground. Just letting that to settle. And sending a thank you to the earth, a thank you to the higher self and beneficial energies, and thanking yourself, letting the energies go out to the earth for love and healing, to the higher self for love and healing, to the beneficial energies for love and healing, and allowing yourself to be loved and healed. And when you feel ready, gently allow yourself to come back. Okay, how was that?
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, I could really feel that taking me to another place. It was also interesting about halfway through that it sort of seemed to have a kind of, once you get into it, it sort of does itself. And that was very, very beautiful, actually. Never really focused on that before, like that gentle movement of the jaw, and it's like it's very organic, isn't it?
Just you do holographic breathing, and that it is an activation. It just works on its own after that, and it does. People don't realize that they once they got it, they're kind of doing it in the background. I had one lady, she did it for a bit and then stopped. She went to the dentist and she was having an x-ray where they put this thing, you're meant to close the jaw. The dentist kept saying to her, will you stop moving your jaw? Because she was doing it without realizing it, and she had to fix her jaw to stop this movement. Just because it's all attached. The diaphragm drops, the whole esophagus, heart, trachea drops, attached to the hyoid, brings the jaw down on the in-breath. And that's held with our normal breath. And once you allow that to keep going, the jaw is moving with the diaphragm. Once that kind of block is taken away, the jaw just gets used to moving with the diaphragm.
That makes sense, doesn't it? Because your pelvic floor moves, diaphragm moves, top of the lungs move. It makes sense that they would all move.
Yeah.
Margaret was saying, yes, Martin, I thought I'd stop doing it, but I hadn't.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Well, do you want to say what your website is, Martin? Because people can subscribe to your newsletter as well, can't they?
My website is holographic-breathing.com. And what will come up first, if you Google that, will probably be holotropic breathing, which is a completely different thing. So make sure you get holographic breathing. I am the founder and I have the only website on it. So you should find me, holographic-breathing.com. I have a free webinar most months. I have practitioner trainings that people can join. And I have ongoing advanced webinar series. At the minute, we're more working with the organs and Kundalini side of it. And the next one of those that I'm thinking of doing is a combination of this work with the Cranial Sea and the organs. So that is all there. I've got hundreds of videos on YouTube. If you just look for holographic breathing, all one word, on YouTube, that's my name on YouTube. There's just loads of videos with guided meditations on just so many. This integrates, I mean, it's holographic just by the name, it integrates into everything. So there's just videos on everything, and half of them kind of have guided meditation to take you into different aspects of things.
Natalie's just put up the link there to your, so holographic-breathing.com.
Brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you, Natalie.
Martin, that was really lovely. Thank you so much. And we'll arrange another time with you. That'd be fantastic.
Brilliant, 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 brilliant. Well, let's hope that practitioners start, well, they already are, I mean, quite a lot of people, but I'd like this to be, you know, a profound, worldwide, large thing, that same way as, you know, other breath works are, or cranial sacral therapy are. Bowen is just that I feel this should be like a you know, worldwide, well-known thing. So it'd be nice. It'd definitely be nice if it could go out in the cranial world anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you for everybody who came.